Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, let's have some fun today. My regular Tuesday live chat at noon. Uh, do it over lunch on the West Coast. It's in the afternoon. Maybe you're done picking up the kids, something like that in the afternoon. So a couple things. Just got off of a plane yesterday from Singapore. I was working for the UFC 275. Incredible event. If you missed it, I feel bad for you. It's absolutely bonkers. But it was 30 hours of travel getting back home. 30 hours of travel. You get to the airport 2 hours early, 7 hours to Korea, 5-hour layover, 14-hour flight to LAX, 45 minutes from LAX to my home in Long Beach. It was a trek. So if I sound a little hoarse, I am unshaven, a little beat up in the face. It's because I've been globetrotting and it's been rough. And it's the time change that gets you too. Like it sucks because like when I was there, I was trying to acclimate to the time change. And then the very last night, I got like a full 8 hours of sleep, like 11 to like 7. Woke up the next morning, and because the event is on the other side of the world, but because it's a UFC pay-per-view, they want it on like the regular broadcast window. Pay-per-view starts at 7 in the West, 10 o'clock in the East. It was Sunday morning at like 6 in the morning when the fight started in Singapore. So I acclimated to local time just in time to do an event on American time and then head home. So that's just how smart my brain works when I'm traveling. But I got some coffee in me. I got some water in me. We got some Raider stuff to talk about. It'll wake me up, get me going. So the first thing I want to get to, I haven't had a chance to talk about it. It's semi-old news, but because I've been traveling, haven't really had a chance to get there yet. But Hunter Renfrow gets his extension. And we were just talking about Hunter Renfrow's extension on our regular big Thursday podcast, and the news came out like literally the next day. Because that's just our luck. Because we were talking about how Cooper Kupp's contract, how that could affect Hunter Renfrow's, and how they were related, how they were different, etc. And Hunter Renfrow gets his deal, $32 million, $21 million guaranteed, 2-year extension. So he'll fight this next year at the end of he'll finish out his rookie contract this season and then 2 more seasons. So it's 2-year extension. He's on the team for 3 more years. And it kind of fits that same window, right? The Derek Carr contract, the Max Crosby contract, the Chandler contract, the Renfrow contract, Devontae Adams contract. There's this little window, like a 3 to 4 year window, where Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are kind of putting everybody in, right? We're like these core guys that we want them in this window. No one got, 5-6 year deals. Very few of the core guys, like none of the core guys got like 1-year deals, right? Darren Waller, of course, being the guy that we're waiting on. We'll get to him in a second. So this Hunter Renfrow deal, we were talking, Soto and I, but like literally the day or two before this contract came out, that man, what if they do like a
All right, I'm back. What if Hunter Renfrow got like a 5-year deal, right? Like young, great teammate. His prime's just entering, or he's just starting to enter his prime. Like, yeah, I think like a 5-year deal would be awesome. You know what I mean? Like maybe even like a 6 or 7 if you had some void years at the end, but keep him on the team for a long time. And he only got a 2-year extension. And I hate the 2-year extension. Now I do understand what they're doing, right? There's some good things to a shorter contract. One, I think McDaniels and Ziegler are like, all right, here's our little window of these guys that aren't our guys, right? Like we didn't draft or we didn't sign Derek Carr or Hunter Renfrow or Max Crosby or Darren Waller. They did sign, Jones and Devontae. But it's like, hey, these aren't really our guys, but they're guys that we want. And if you ask McDaniels, and I believe him, one of the big reasons why he came to the Raiders was because of Derek Carr. Like you have a franchise quarterback in his prime. How many brand new coaches get that, right? Because every time you start, whenever there's a whole new regime change on a team, new head coach, new coaching staff, new GM, it's because the team sucks, right? You don't clean house for a team that won 10 games and went to the playoffs, right? You only do that when it's a John Gruden imploded mid-season and you need a new head coach. So, but a big part of it was because he got Derek Carr. So when you look at this deal for Hunter Renfrow, this again solidifies to me that Ziegler and McDaniels have this like 3-4 year window in their mind where they're going to want to have this core do big things, right? No one signed a deal longer than that. I also understand partly, and Soto talked about this a lot, about Hunter Renfrow having maybe a shorter career because he is so small. Smaller guys generally don't hold up as well as big guys, right? You're just not as big as the guys tackling you. Hunter Renfrow's my size, right? Like he may take some lickings. Now he's shown to be extremely durable. He's obviously incredibly tough, not afraid to run up the middle, not afraid to block downfield, not afraid to take on a tackler. But a guy his size can only take so much of a beating, right? Like some of these safeties are like 220. A free safety that going full speed 220 and cracking him when he's doing like a slant route, like that's gonna wear on you. Like that's gonna beat you up a little bit. And also, referees just let defenses do whatever they want to Hunter Renfrow. It's like Hunter Renfrow's inside the UFC octagon in there. Like they have bludgeoned Hunter Renfrow, and the refs are just like, oh yeah, well it's football. Let him get his ass kicked. Let him get crushed. Helmet to helmet, no big deal. Late hit, I didn't see nothing. I don't know what it is. Because you'd think it'd be the other way. Like you notice a lot of quarterbacks who take hits not well. Like quarterbacks who, when they get hit, they just look like they're just floundering. Like there's quarterbacks who take a hit and it's like, oh, this doesn't phase them. They just take a hit and just, whoa, and I'm good to go. Right? Josh Allen's kind of that way. But then there's quarterbacks who like take a hit and they just like look like they're dying. That's not Hunter Renfrow. He takes a hit well, even if it's an illegal or an aggressive hit. So maybe they're worried about his longevity. This is the problem, though. This is the main reason I don't like this contract. We're gonna have to repay him down the line. If we're gonna keep him, he's only gonna get more expensive, I feel. Because you look at the Josh McDaniels system and those slot wide receivers flourish. We talked about it 100 times. The Wes Welkers of the world, etc. Like they do. Like this is great for Hunter Renfrow's career. Like he should be doing amazing next season and in the following seasons because of a Josh McDaniels system. And not only that, like if you've got Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow, you're probably going to leave Hunter Renfrow like less attention, right? Like if you're a defensive coordinator, who are you focusing on? If you're any defensive coordinator, right, regardless of how your defense is built, what are you focusing on every single time you face the Raiders? You're going to stop Devontae Adams. You're going to stop Darren Waller, right? If you're focused on Hunter Renfrow, I think Hunter Renfrow still isn't appreciated by the rest of the league at the extent that he should be for how good he is, how good his route running is, how good he is as a total football player. He's going to be the guy paid attention to the least. So he's going to have some really huge games this season because they're going to be double teaming Waller and Adams, or at least they should be. And the second they don't, right? Like Derek Carr and Devontae, Derek Carr and Waller, like they've played together enough where they're like, hey, like they'll peek over, like, hey, I'm in man coverage. I'm in single man coverage against a 5'9" corner. Like go to me, right? Like that's going to be a big thing. So I don't like this deal as a team standpoint, because when this is over, I feel like Hunter Renfrow is going to be at the peak of his like purchase power. Like he's going to be at the peak of his demand because he's going to do really well these next 3 seasons, and then he's going to be able to go back to the Raiders and say, "Yeah, look, I got all these numbers. I've been consistent. I've gotten all these scores. I've done so well. Blah blah blah. Like I'm going to want to get paid again." So that's the one downside of this contract is I think we're going to have to pay Hunter Renfrow again, and it's going to be more. The beauty of these long contracts is, like, obviously you're committing yourself to somebody who may or may not be great down the line, someone who may get hurt down the line. And again, I think also this entire regime is saying we're going to give this crew 3 or 4 years because maybe they don't mesh, right? Like, all signs point towards Josh McDaniels and Hunter Renfrow being a perfect match, right? the gritty slot corner, like a smart slot wide receiver. Guys like that are supposed to flourish in Josh McDaniels' offense. So all signs point towards it, but maybe it doesn't happen, right? Like there's a million reasons why some player won't fit in the system. And maybe there's kind of like hedging their bets a little bit, like, all right, let's not commit to anybody longer than 3 years because we don't know if they're going to work in our system, but we'll give them 3 years to figure it out. If it were longer, we could pay them less per season because that's generally how it works. The longer the contract, less per season, but then you're committed to them longer, right? So I don't like how short the contract is. I think it's going to come back to bite us in 3 years when it's time for Hunter Renfrow to get paid again. But I do understand what Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are doing. And that's probably the best, like the biggest thing I've learned this offseason from this new regime is that there is a plan. We're starting to see the foundation of it, and they're executing it. With John Gruden, it was just like whatever he felt like the morning he woke up is what he was going to do. It just felt like so much of what he did just felt impulsive. It just felt like, hey, whatever like flavor cup of coffee he got that morning is how he's going to run that team. This way, I'm seeing that McDaniels and Ziegler are focusing on the great passing attack, rushing the passer, and give themselves a 3 or 4 year window to do it. And that's how they're executing everything, right? They developed depth in the draft. They literally went like the best guy available in the positions that we needed. And we're seeing like a formulation of a plan. And of course, because of the ultimate poker player, is not going to come right out and say it, but we're starting to see the hints. And they haven't done one snap yet. They've done a week and a half of real practice. But because of how they're building this roster, how they're building these contracts, we're starting to see like this plan come together. We're starting to see a plan shape up. And I like that. I like, and you have a plan, you stick to it, right? Trust the process, like Belichick always said. That's an important part of this. So I'm hoping Hunter Renfrow has a great season next season because he should be the guy open, right? We're probably not going to run the ball all that great because our O-line's not good. Hopefully they come together, but the O-line's not great. We're going to be passing the ball a lot, which leads me to my next topic. Soto and I, on our main show last week, and it was a what up Windbag. It was a question at the end. We wasn't even trying to make it a topic, but kind of stumbled on it. We were talking about Derek Carr, and I'll just let you listen to it. Take a listen.
How many times do you want him throwing the ball a game?
25 to 30.
I think much higher. With these receivers, with Devontae, Waller, and Renfrow, I think 40 is a good number or higher.
Dude, that's fucking ridiculous. Receivers? You don't want him dropping back 40 fucking times, man. You don't want
a lot of 3-step drops, little screens to those guys.
Dude, he fumbled against the fucking Bengals on a 3-step drop because he hitched twice. So I don't want to do that. 40 times is ridiculous. You're smoking crack right now. I don't want Derek Carr's. I don't want my quarterback at all dropping back 40 times a game. That's way too much.
How many targets do you want Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller getting every game? Because if it's 25 times a game, they're getting like 5 targets, 6 targets each.
Make them count, baby. That's all. Other parts. Look, you have 30. If you throw the ball 30 times a game.
So I say about 40, and then Soto was like, no more than 25. And I kind of explains like, well, we've got 3 superstar wide receiver targets or pass catching targets. It's like, you got to have more than that. And then he immediately did like a 180, like, well, we go to 30. I'm convinced if we did that exact topic for 3 more minutes, I would have gotten him to 35. Because think about it. With those guys, like they're gonna need the ball. That's just bad allocation of assets, right? Let's do some numbers, right? This is the funnest part of podcasting, math, right? Make this bigger. There we go. Okay. So here are the average amounts of passes per game per team. Okay. Tampa Bay had the most, 43 passes per game. Kansas City had 39.9. Chargers at 39.6. Steelers 39.3. Dallas 38. and us Vegas at 38, right? So we were 6th in pass attempts per game at 38. And I thought we had a pretty well balanced offense last season. I thought we were pretty well balanced considering our skill set. I mean, think about it. 38 passes a game when there were large swaths of this, like big chunks of the season where Zay Jones was our number 1 wide receiver. 38 passes a game when our number 1 wide receiver only played a handful of games in Henry Ruggs before he was gone. 38 passes a game when our arguably the best player in our team, Darren Waller, was out for 5 games. 38 passes a game when Zay Jones was like a starting wide receiver. We all know how I feel about starting wide receivers. So you're telling me that like last season when we passed the ball 38 times a game, and now we've added Davante Adams, now we've added hopefully an offensive coordinator and Josh McDaniels, an offensive, minded head coach that is going to score us a lot of points. An offense with Davante Adams, an offense where Hunter Renfrow came into his own last season. You're telling me it's outrageous to throw the ball 2 more times a game than last season? Get the fuck out of here, Soto. Get the fuck out of here. We were 6th in passes per game last season. It should be more next season because we have so many great targets. Like, just think of what we spent all our money on. Davante Adams, he was the highest paid wide receiver for like 45 minutes, and it cost us two picks to get him, first and second. Hunter Renfrow we just extended. Darren Waller hopefully is healthy. Is going to be a contract year for him, basically, right? Like he's got 2 more years left on his contract, no guaranteed money. I think the Raiders will just let him do his contract next season and then extend him either mid-season or after next season. I think, could be wrong. I mean, these guys need targets. You can't pay Davante Adams $28 million a year and throw him the ball 5 times a game. You can't give Hunter Renfrow an extension and throw him the ball only 4 or 5 times a game. Like, these guys need targets. Not only that, but in a Josh McDaniels offense, the running backs get a lot of targets. So they're going to, Drake's going to take some targets. Jacobs is going to take some targets. We're going to need to throw the ball 40 times a game. And it's not like 40 times a game is outrageous. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 teams average roughly 40, right? Half the league threw the ball 35 times a game or more. Half the league threw the ball 35 times a game or more. And Soto's like, no, it should be 30. It should be less than that. It's like, with our targets, with Davante Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, you want to throw the ball less than the average? That's nuts. That's absolutely bonkers. And not only that, it's not like our run game is on paper anything special. Like, our O-line is arguably bottom 5 in the league. Josh Jacobs can't stay healthy. Kenyon Drake can't stay healthy. We're going to lean on a rookie and a bad line to run this offense? No. We need to, and I'm the last guy to say, sling the ball. Let's go deep every time. Like, to me, I was like, no, let's orchestrate a good offense, right? Let's keep the turnovers low. Let's play smart football. But this offense isn't designed to do that. And the money isn't allocated to do that. Now, if we had paid, if we signed a couple of $20 million tackles and a couple of $12 million guards and we extended Josh Jacobs, then be like, okay, yeah, Josh McDaniels wants to build a running team. We're going to be a smash mouth football team. Okay, cool. You can win that way. I'm not against it, right? Smash mouth football, and then we'll throw in some play action, Waller down the middle, right? If all the money we spent on Davante Adams and Hunter Renfrow went to the O-line, then I'd be like, okay, he wants to be a running team. And that kind of makes sense because all the defenses in the AFC West are building to be run or pass defenses because they've got to go against Russell Wilson, Herbert, etc., right? But we're not. All of our money was spent towards being a big passing team. So we need to be a big passing team next season. The ball needs to be thrown 40 times a game because we're just built that way. Sorry, Soto, but you want us to throw the ball less than average? That's ridiculous. Now, he made a good point that Derek Carr needs to get his turnovers under control if that's the case, right? And especially like if our O-line's passing defense isn't great, you got to be careful about 5-step drops and him getting hurt because I don't know if the O-line can handle it. Well, there's ways around it, right? Screen passes, play action. There's ways around it. But I had to get that off my chest because I was like, yeah, I think like 40 times a game sounds about right. I think Soto's probably on board. It's like, whoa, you're insane. 25 or 30 times a game. It's like, oh, less than average? Really? Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow? Like, think about it. How many targets per game should Devontae Adams get next season? Average. 8, 9, 10? Number one wide receiver in football. Already got, he was the highest paid wide receiver in football, and that was like top 4-ish. Gave up a first and a second round for him. He's already got synergy with Derek Carr. We don't have much of a run game on paper to speak of. Like, he needs to be getting like 8, 9, 10 targets a game. Darren Waller needs to be getting 6, 7, 8 targets a game. Hunter Renfrow should be getting 6, 7, 8 targets a game. Like, that adds up. Like, that's 25 pass attempts. Those 3 alone should get 25 targets a game altogether. Just those 3 alone. At least 25 targets a game. And that doesn't include passes to the, other wide receivers, Foster, Moreau, the running backs. Again, Josh McDaniels loves to throw to their running backs. Like, these guys need targets. And they should get targets. And they've earned those targets. Let's do it. All right, take some chats. William Merchant, UFC 275. We got our money's worth. Here, I'll let you edited it, so I'll give you the edited one, William. Yeah, no kidding. So, you guys, real quick, I love talking Raiders on my MMA show, and I love talking MMA on my Raiders show. Just it's nice to like mix it up. If you missed it, Yuri Prochazka and Glover Teixeira put on a fight of the year. Glover Teixeira was like the feel-good fighter of the year because he's 42 years old and became champion this year, and like a good guy, so everyone felt good for him. But Yuri Prochazka, if you don't know who he is, he's this dude. His head is completely shaved except for right here, and he's got a giant ponytail that he like tapes so like sticks up like an antenna, like a Teletubby. And he only throws heat. Like, he's just a wall of violence that come at you. And it was great. It was 5 rounds of awesome. Valentina Shevchenko and Talia Santos. Santos got robbed. Shevchenko got exposed. And then we saw Zhang Wei Li knock out Joanna Jędrzejczyk spinning back fist. Only the second spinning back fist knockout in UFC history. And Joanna retired. And that was just the big 3 fights at the top. The rest of the fights were awesome. Like, it was card of the year. UFC London was card of the year for a while. UFC 275 just took that mantle. Yesterday's passing team is today's rushing team. Compare the 1991 Buffalo Bills to last year's 49ers. The NFL sure has changed. Yeah, it's passing league, no doubt about it. And this is the team built to be a passing team. Like, just look where the money has spent. You don't give Devontae Adams, $25 million a year and become a run team. They spent no money on the O-line. Not a dime. All the money they're spending on their O-line are contracts they inherited. Colt Miller, they inherited, although I'm very confident they would have paid Miller. Andre James, they inherited. Brandon Parker was the only guy really that they spent any starting money on. That's it. He was already on board. And it was just like, all right, let's keep this guy for a couple mil a year. It was starting money, but it wasn't a lot. It's like they made. So one of 2 things happened, right? There's literally only one of 2 things that's the case with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. They either think that the O-line is awesome and just terribly coached. So like, hey, they looked at last year's O-line performance and like, these are our guys. These are our starters. We can do anything we want with these guys. They're just poorly coached. So we're going to keep them and we're going to coach them up. Or they're saying, you know what? We're going to be a pass team. We're going to keep a big body in the backfield to help block. We're going to have Foster Moreau on the end to help block. We're going to max protect Darren Waller, and we're going to throw to Devontae, Darren, and Hunter. And I think it's the second one. I don't think any football guy looked at last year's Raiders O-line and thought, those are some stars. Just Tom Cable ruined them. I think they're thinking that they're better than they performed last season, but there's no way you looked at last year's offensive line and thought, yeah, we're going to be a running team next season. Come on. Steve the Cockfighter. Cross the Renfrow Bridge when you get there. No need to overpay 4 years out, hoping everything works out. And that's what they're doing, right? 2-year extension, 3 years, so he'll be 3 years left. That's what they're doing. But that's what I mean. No need to overpay 4 years out. The longer the contract, the less per year it is. You know what I'm saying? I get what you're saying. Longer contract, more guaranteed money. So if you're thinking, overpay means more guaranteed money, okay. But the longer the contract, the less you pay per year, right? And we're going to have to overpay Hunter 3 seasons from now is my worry. That's what I'm saying. Like remember when Darren Waller, his second year with the Raiders, but his first year when he was starting to actually start and play well, they immediately gave him this contract that he's currently under now, this 4-year deal. Why would you give a 4-year deal to a tight end that not on anybody's radar? You plucked off the Raiders practice squad. Really, no one knows about him. It's because if you don't pay him now, you're gonna have to pay him way more next season. So we can knock Mike Mayock and John Gruden all day long for how poorly they managed their roster and the giant contracts they gave out. Almost none of those giant contracts panned out. They brilliantly handled Darren Waller. They brilliantly handled Darren Waller's contract. He's the 17th highest paid tight end in football next season. And he's top 3. Because they signed him to a 4-year deal early. And they knew he'd be a superstar and they'd have to pay him. So if they gave him a 2-year deal, we'd have to monsterly pay him this season. He's got 2 more years on his deal. Now, he won't play all 2 years, but he's got 2 years left on his deal. They handled it brilliantly because they paid him medium early instead of little short and then a lot after. And again, I understand what Ziegler and McDaniels are doing. Here's our little 3-4-year window. We want Hunter Renfrow to be in that window, Carr to be in that window, Adams to be in that window, Chandler Jones to be in that window. Okay, I get what they're doing. I see the plan. But someone's going to have to pay Hunter Renfrow a lot come, 2025. Someone's going to pay him a lot. And if it's us, it's us. If it's someone else because we can't afford him, then so be it. Nick 209, don't let Soto tell you otherwise. Oh, I didn't. You guys saw that video that I just played, that clip I just played. He bent, not me. I was like, we need to throw the ball 40 times a game. He's like, oh, you're on crack. He literally said I'm on crack throwing the ball 40 times a game. When the Raiders threw it over 38 times a game last season. That's an insane number because it's slightly higher than last season. I'm telling you, if Soto and I kept that conversation going, I could have got him to 35 passes per game when it started at 25. I could have broken. I asked how many times should we pass the ball to Devontae Adams, or how many targets should Devontae Adams get a game? Elbron Holio says 8. Nick 209 says 7 at least. My first thought was 8. 8+ is the right answer. And again, it's the beauty of Josh McDaniel's system is that it's super diverse and can change from game to game. Like when we play the Chargers, I could see that that 2 times a year we're more of a run team. Like if we're playing the Chargers, I can see us passing the ball only 25, 28 times in those games because they have the worst running defense in football. Like it's terrible. And it got worse as the season went on last year. Like Josh Jacobs went nuts in week 18 against the Chargers, right? So but if we play who's a team we're gonna pass all over the place? Like the Steelers, that'll be like a 45 passes a game against the Steelers. You'll mix it up. So again, I'm not saying that we have to commit to this number and stick to it come hell or high water. I'm not saying every single game there's an assistant coach with a clicker and he's counting how many targets that Devontae Adams get, and you have to stick to that no matter what. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if the offense is running as it should, we're throwing the ball 40 times a game. Devontae Adams is getting 8 targets a game. Darren Waller's getting 6 or 7. Renfrow's getting 6 or 7. That's just one. It's just the best allocation of assets. Like why would you buy a $250,000 Ferrari if it's going to sit in the garage 350 days a year, right? Why would you buy like a Rolex watch if you're only going to wear it once a year? You know what I mean? Like use your assets. Like whatever you've spent your money on, that should be part of what you're doing. That's the big part. But yeah, like these guys should be getting a ton of targets every single game. Like that's what they're there for. If Devontae Adams on the sideline or he's blocking, we don't need a $28 million blocker down there. We can have Brian Edwards do it for like an eighth as much. Raider for life. Renfrow needs a quarterback. Had to get a Derek Carr dig in here at some point today, right? 30 minutes in, our first Derek Carr dig. I think that's a record for us. Normally, like the first 5 minutes, someone does a little passive aggressive spot, right? Little mm-hmm. Okay. Hold, please.